water district, you need to go vote for Clyde Pitch, because he's going to raise issues. The former city councilman, you know, the issues, I think a lot of you understand this, or else there wouldn't be a Green Party table here and there wouldn't be people trying to sign up for kinky freedom. The issues that we're concerned about when it comes to talking about saving our planet are way beyond partisan politics. Clyde doesn't get most of the environmental issues, but he gets corruption, and he understands what's going on now. So I've gone from how do you save your parks, which was my assignment. You save your parks by getting involved. And when you're talking about municipal parks, every one of you need to call your city council member, let them know that you're voting in the ordinance charter amendments. If you're on the east side, let them know that you're voting that special election, and let them know that you're unhappy, because to a council member, they made comments that were a disservice to protecting our parks. And we've had a couple of meetings since the first of the year. There will be a huge public meeting in early June that the city's sponsoring, and we are asking you now, whether you got on the Texas Campaign for the Environment email list because they're door-to-door work, or whether or not you're on my email list, and I have contact information if you want to get on my email list, we're asking you now to commit to come to that public meeting in June and help us fight the destruction of Trinity Park. Fort Worth historically has had far less parkland per capita than most cities in this country. There are national professional standards, none of which Texans ever meet, whether it's human services or public education or recreational facilities for our parkland. We cannot afford to lose 1 square foot of our parkland. The League of Women Voters has taken a leadership role in this. The Texas Campaign for the Coalition for Environmental Awareness has been a part of that, the Texas Campaign for the Environment, but we need your help. The first step, the easiest step, is sometime beginning Monday, go vote. I'm voting against all the charter amendments because that's, to me, where we are. Just say, you know, you get a 0 on your attempt, that means we could go back and get the charter amendment that we want on the ballot, because the rules say we can't have any more charter amendment elections for 2 years unless it's about civil service. So the police and fire will be able to have another charter amendment in November, but people in the environmental community, we don't have those safeguards. We don't have an opportunity to have another say unless we defeat these charter amendments. There are other parks that we've been talking about. There was in November a clandestine agreement. Nobody saw this, but they gave off some parkland at Rockwood Park for another development, a development that is in the floodplain that shouldn't even be developed, but we gave parkland away so they could build another road. There are problems with some of our parks because of previous land use or because of runoff issues. Some of you may be aware of the arsenic issue in the Greenway Park. There are problems in our parks because of abuse and neglect, and the only way we're going to turn that around is for people like you that care to become in a parkland protection. And I've completely left out the drilling issue in our parks. How could I have done that, Don? Good thing you were standing there. I completely left out the issue of drilling in our parks and the appropriateness of what we're doing on that. So Don, what's the next thing they can do on drilling?
Raise the distance to at least 1,000 feet.
We want to raise the distance. Even Mayor Moncrief has been smart enough to figure out we need to do it at least 600 feet. I don't know if you know what his economic background is, but he has a few conflict of interest in this area. Don's group is talking about 1,000 feet. Whatever, and I put out an email saying, Don, let's look for some compromise. They're moving in our direction. I don't know how many people have to die in accidents to get them to look at this. Is there another public meeting, another public occasion soon for?
This guy here would know, Gary.
The last public meeting is going to be at the City Council adoption. There will be another task force meeting next Thursday at the Hanley Meadowbrook Community Center.
The next task force meeting is Thursday, 5 days from now, at the Hanley Meadowbrook Community Center. I urge you to go to that. I'll probably be in Austin because of the special session. But I urge you to get involved in protecting our environment at a local level. And there couldn't be anything more local than what we're talking about on this gas drilling situation. I've probably talked too long. I'll be here for a few more minutes. Glad to visit with anybody. If you are not on my email information list, please get the information from me so you can call my office and get on that list. Right now I'm doing weekly emails on the special session, but during most of January and February I was doing weekly emails on the fight to save Trinity Park, and I'm glad to be here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lon. I think he really brought up so many things that we need to be thinking about. And boy, we've got a nice crowd here. He seemed to have drawn a crowd. Good job. We're going to have another speaker. Gary Hogan is going to speak. He's been serving on the gas well drilling task force, and he is involved with a neighborhood association in West Fort Worth, and I don't remember what your position is or what the name of the neighborhood association, but I'm just going to let him speak for himself because he's quite able.
Well, thank you all very much. And Don, I'd like to congratulate you on bringing this event together. I know you put a lot of hard work into it. At the same time, you've been fighting this battle with me. So kudos to Don for all the hard work he does and what he does out here. Well, back sometime in the summer of last year, my neighborhood, which is just on the opposite side of Fort Worth from where we are now, just outside Loop 820 on the west side, learned that we were going to get assaulted by gas well drilling. Now, the first rig came in, and if I wasn't president of the Chapel Creek Neighborhood Association out there, nobody would have even been notified of this assault. Because the current practice is that the gas well drillers trying to find places where they can put up a rig 600 feet from the nearest protected use, which is the corner of your house, and start drilling for gas. And if they're outside that limit, they don't have to notify anybody. About that same time, as I started raising some ire in our neighborhood, invited several councilmen out to my neighborhood to spend the evening at 12 to 1 a.m. listening to gas wells screeching at 85 decibels that goes on for 23 days at least, non-stop. It's quite an intrusive impact to any neighborhood that were going on. And we started enough noise that our councilman recommended this current task force. And I agree with Don in the very beginning. It really was a task force. The so-called force is made up of 5 gas well drilling companies, 5 developers. In the original, it was 8 citizens for the mayor and the council seats. One district was obviously left out, District 7, which was probably had the largest experience of gas well drilling in the city of Fort Worth at the time. And the District 7 councilman decided he wasn't going to partake at these hearings at first by putting a citizen's advocate on the committee. After being somewhat chastised for that fact by myself at the second meeting, he did appoint somebody by the third meeting.
He's also the worst on parks in general, so we need to talk.
Okay.
I'm after him.
So anyway, again, speaking about this city council, many times and on many issues, they are not looking out for the best interests of the citizens of Fort Worth. Too much stuff is going on behind closed doors. Conflicts of interest, gas well drilling, when you have a mayor that came back from the state legislature and stepped into a role as mayor to do great things for Fort Worth. I guess he figured gas well drilling and all the money it would bring to the city of Fort Worth was that great thing, whether it was great for neighborhoods or not. I can't believe that at that time that he did not know the impacts of gas well drilling on neighborhoods. And so, but here we are today. The task force has worked pretty diligently. The citizens advocates, especially 4 of us, have been pushing the issue of distance. But at every turn of events, anytime we start measuring distances in thousands of feet, which logically would tell people that's probably about as close as you should be, we are assaulted with threats of lawsuits that for taking of mineral rights. Now, we got to understand the way our state legislative laws are written right now, those laws are probably pretty well upheld, and the big industry people can pretty much take advantage of anybody that just owns surface land. So it is a tight bridge to try to cross on this issue. 1,000 feet has never been tested in the courts. Several communities are talking about 1,000-foot distance from people's residential or protected uses. That's churches, schools, and parks also. So, you know, where we live and eat and play. So I have still held on to 1,000-foot preferred distance. We were talking at the recommendation after that tragic event in Forest Hill. Mayor Moncrief did step up and publicly take credit for 600 feet, even though that had been bantered by many of us council people for a long time, and no word from him at that point. But he did take credit for recommending over and above what the task force had recommended. And the Star-Telegram also failed to mention that 4 members of that task force did stand up for bigger distances. That kind of went on by the wayside too. So we are still fighting for this bigger distance. I had made the proposal for the 1,000 feet to be considered distance before we even dropped down to 600 feet. I was not voted, but the way the minutes were taken down, it turned out that I was the sole voice for 1,000 feet. And that was kind of by the way the meeting was run. It wasn't ever really put to a vote. It was also put into the record at that time that one of the energy people or the developers said that, well, if Mr. Hogan wants 1,000 feet, then I want it to stay the same, which is 200 feet. So, but I think the movement right now is probably going to be going to a 600-foot setback for drilling operations. I think the industry is ready to accept that, but saying that, the only thing that's going to change that is when it goes before City Council and citizens jump up and just say no, that 1,000 feet. And there have been a lot of people that have come to our meetings. Probably 75% or more want the 1,000 feet or more distance. So, but that may end up in litigation at 1,000 feet. I fully expect that if we try to go 1,000 feet, the industry is going to play the poker game and see if lawsuits are going to stop it. At this point, I don't think our city council has the backbone or desire to stand up to litigation at 1,000 feet. But people, you're the voice. If you demand it, that's what they've got to do. So if people really care about it, show up at these task force meetings, help Don at these protests. I mean, Lord Almighty, Don, you've taken all the beat up from everybody in this city and had to take the personal attack for being the outrageous voice. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. You know, somebody's got to speak up and somebody's got to put himself out there and make the noise and be willing to take the abuse. Don, you need applause for that from this city. So at this point, what I'm asking people to do is talk to everybody you can, your friends, your family. Explain to them, you know, how would you like to live next to a gas well at 200 feet, at 300 feet? How would you like to have these operations at 600 feet? Because frankly, at those distances, there are going to be thousands of these rigs throughout our city, thousands. Because at that kind of distance, they're going to be able to put them up almost nearly anywhere. So we've got to kick this back as far as we can. We've got to be protective of our neighborhoods. We've got to be protective of our city. And it's going to be not Gary Hogan on this task force that is going to be able to get it done. We need the continuance, and as this goes through the process, I hope there's so much outrage at this city council meeting that they've got a postponed decision on this on May 8th or 9th.
So be there.
Be there, come out, talk to everybody you can, talk to your family, tell them, make them aware of this issue. We need your help, and we need the city to know that we're serious. We need this distance and not to kowtow to just the money interest of this thing. So join us, speak out, and help us to build a better neighborhoods and build a better city. We want this to always be the most livable city in Texas, and we're not going in that direction right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. And we really appreciate you. That's a lot of hard work to be on that task force because they've had to meet a lot of times and for a long period of time. So, you know, we need to honor Gary for doing that and for, you know, trying to get as much knowledge as he can about this issue. I guess at some point we were hoping or expecting to hear from Kathleen Hicks, who's the City Council representative from District 8 that we're in right now, and it's you know how districts are, they're funny shape and all that. But we haven't seen her yet. But there's someone here who I had invited to speak, and that is my father, who is a botanist by profession and is now retired for quite some time. But he grew up in Sherman, Texas, and has had a lot of connection with the Metroplex over the years and knows something about the natural history of this area, and has a few words that he'd like to share with us today. And I may end up getting him a chair because he has... But just so you'll feel better, I want to let him sit down. And this is Joe Hennon, former professor at Purdue University in Indiana.
I certainly don't speak as a politician or someone to get you excited about politics and how to vote and all, but I wish I had that ability, but I don't. And so I'm going to talk about a little bit of stuff that I know a little bit about. If you all remember, not too long ago, they destroyed a building over here in Fort Worth in I don't know how many seconds it took to blow up that building, and you could see it on TV and just all crushed to the ground in a few seconds. I don't know how long it took them to build that building, but it must have been several months, perhaps more than a year. I just don't know for sure. But I do know that they could rebuild that same building if they wanted to. If people had the incentive or money and they wanted to rebuild that same building, they could do it. Piece by piece. They have the plans. They could get all of the materials that they need, and that building could be put back up probably in a shorter time than it took them to build it in the first place. But our native prairies here in